Imagine walking down a quiet highway in February 1979, making your way from your parents' house to visit your sister. The evening air is cool, the world feels safe. But within minutes, your life is brutally stolen. Your body is discovered the next day, abandoned on the roadside. For 45 years, your family holds on to one unshakable question: who did this? Then, in November 2024, a name finally emerged from the silence. This is the story of cold cases that refuse to stay buried, and the revolutionary technology bringing killers to justice decades after they thought they'd gotten away with murder. Cold cases aren't just unsolved mysteries. They're wounds that never heal, question marks that hang over entire communities. And for families left behind, daily reminders that justice was denied to someone they loved. But something remarkable is happening in police departments across America. Cases once considered unsolvable are finally being cracked open, not by new witnesses or deathbed confessions, but by microscopic evidence that's been waiting patiently in evidence rooms for its moment to speak. The case of 17-year-old Esther Gonzalez perfectly illustrates this revolution. On February 9, 1979, Esther was attacked and murdered while walking between her parents' home in Beaumont and her sister's house in Banning, California. Her body was found the next day off Highway 243. The investigation identified a person of interest, a man named Lewis Randolph Williamson, who had called to report finding a body. Investigators asked him to take a polygraph test. He agreed, he passed, and at the time, that cleared him. The case went cold for decades. But here's what makes modern investigations so powerful. In 2023, the Riverside County Regional Cold Case Homicide Team sent evidence to a specialized laboratory, initiating forensic investigative genetic genealogy. A crime analyst made a crucial observation. Although Williamson had been cleared by polygraph in 1979, he was never cleared through DNA because the technology didn't exist yet. Williamson had died in Florida in 2014. A blood sample from his autopsy was sent to the California Department of Justice. In November 2024, 45 years after Esther's murder, the results confirmed that Williamson's DNA matched DNA recovered from her body. The man who passed a polygraph was finally, definitively, identified as her killer. The revolution solving these cases is called forensic genetic genealogy, and it's fundamentally changing law enforcement. Traditional DNA testing relies on finding matches in government databases like CODIS, which contains profiles from arrestees and convicted criminals. But what happens when the killer's DNA isn't in the database? What if they were never arrested? That's where the old system hit a wall. Forensic genetic genealogy takes a different approach. Instead of looking for exact matches in criminal databases, investigators upload crime scene DNA to public genealogy databases where millions of people have voluntarily submitted their DNA to learn about their ancestry. When crime scene DNA is uploaded, it identifies distant relatives, people who share portions of DNA with the unknown suspect. These might be third cousins or great-grandparents. Genetic genealogists then build elaborate family trees, working backward through generations and sideways through family branches, narrowing down potential suspects until they identify the most likely individual. It's painstaking work that can take months, but it's solving crimes that seemed impossible to crack. The numbers tell an extraordinary story. According to the Bureau of Justice Administration, their cold case program has identified 94 suspects who were initially unknown through DNA work. 39 came specifically from forensic genetic genealogy. 66 cases have been charged or indicted, and 83 cold cases have been resolved. In Colorado alone, since 2018, approximately 75 cases have been solved using this technology. These aren't just statistics. Each number represents a family that finally got answers and a killer who can no longer hide behind the passage of time. Consider Therese Becker, last seen on December 4, 1975, hitchhiking to visit her boyfriend in Brighton, Colorado. 2 days later, her body was found dumped in a field outside Denver. An autopsy determined she had been raped and died by asphyxiation. Investigators returned to the case repeatedly for nearly 5 decades, but the trail stayed cold. Then in 2018, Westminster police turned to genetic genealogy. The process took 5 years, complicated because the suspect's parents had divorced. He'd been adopted by his stepfather and used his stepfather's last name. But in 2024, they finally identified Thomas Martin Elliott, a career criminal who had died in 1991. The identification brought closure to Therese's family 48 years after her murder. Then there's Mary Kay Schleiss, a hitchhiker stabbed to death in 1974. For 50 years, her murder remained unsolved. DNA testing finally identified 84-year-old John Miller as the suspect, and in 2024, the Dunn County Sheriff's Office arrested him. At a news conference, investigator Dan Westland emphasized what these cases are truly about: justice for the victims and closure for families. He added that Mary can be remembered as an accomplished artist, equestrian, sister and daughter, not just as a victim in an unsolved case. One remarkable aspect is how this technology solves cases where killer and victim had no prior connection. Danielle Houchins was 15 when she vanished in Montana in 1996. Her body was found near a river, the victim of assault. For 28 years, her family waited. In 2024, forensic experts matched DNA to Paul Hutchinson, a man with no known connection to Danielle. When police contacted him, he took his own life within 24 hours. DNA testing confirmed the match for Danielle's younger sister. Finally, knowing what happened allowed the family to heal. The case proved genetic genealogy can solve even random crimes committed by complete strangers. Not every case results in an arrest. Sometimes the killer has died, having escaped legal consequences. But even when prosecution is impossible, the truth matters. When Idaho's Ada County Sheriff closed its investigation into Mary Tracy's 1980 murder in June 2024, the suspect, Charles Nicholas Strain, had already died in prison in 2007. DNA results identified Strain with a likelihood ratio of 1 in 522 octillion. Mary's case had been reopened in 2023 at her family's request. They finally got their answer 44 years later. Elizabeth Gonzalez, Esther's older sister, wrote about learning her sister's killer had been identified. The family is very happy they finally have closure, though sad the suspect died and won't spend time for her murder. It's a bittersweet resolution shared by many families. The person responsible can never face trial, never be held publicly accountable. But the uncertainty ends. The family knows, the community knows, and the victim's memory is no longer shadowed by unanswered questions. Law enforcement agencies are dedicating unprecedented resources to cold cases. Osceola County in Florida formed a cold case program in 2024 and has already solved 2 of 32 unsolved cases. Washington State's Attorney General dedicated $220,000 to assist local agencies with felony cold case investigations through forensic genetic genealogy. These represent a fundamental shift in how the justice system approaches unsolved crimes. The rise of consumer DNA testing has inadvertently created the databases making these investigations possible. Millions have uploaded DNA data to learn about ancestors or find relatives. Most have no idea their genetic information might help solve a violent crime committed by a distant relative they've never met. According to surveys, over half of people support using DNA databases to solve serious crimes, though about 1/3 express privacy concerns. There's something profound about cases that refuse to stay buried. It suggests truth has a weight to it, a gravity that pulls at investigators across decades, that won't let families rest, that keeps evidence speaking even when mouths have been silenced. The cold cases being solved today span from the 1970s, when DNA technology didn't exist, to the 1990s and 2000s, when testing existed but genetic genealogy hadn't been developed. Each solved case represents not just technical achievement but moral commitment. It says we don't give up on victims because time has passed. It says killers don't escape justice by outliving investigations. It says truth matters, even when it comes decades late. As we move forward, more cold cases will be pulled from archives and subjected to analysis that was science fiction when the crimes occurred. Families who thought they'd never get answers will receive calls from detectives. Some will learn the killer is dead. Others will see elderly suspects arrested and charged. Either way, the silence is broken. The question mark finally gets replaced with a period. Like this video to tell YouTube that stories like this matter. Share it with someone who believes in justice. Drop a comment telling me which cold case you think deserves to be solved next. Together, we keep these stories alive, and we remind everyone that no case is truly cold as long as people refuse to let it be forgotten. I'll see you in the next one, and until then, remember truth waits, but it doesn't surrender.